Hello and welcome to this presentation to the HashiCorp FSI user group. I will say up front that we had some technical difficulties during the meeting time this month, and so this is a new recording of the presentation so that it can be made available in a good form. So I am Mike Augustine. I am a staff customer success architect with HashiCorp. I've been here about 3.5 years. In prior experience, I worked with HashiCorp products doing major cloud platform for Department of Homeland Security, and fell in love with the products. And as I went to move on from there, made a path to join HashiCorp. In my background, I've had quite a varied number of different positions, different levels, and a good part of that for over 10 years was working for an online banking and bill payment company known as Online Resources, later acquired by ACI worldwide, and eventually parts of that was bought by Fiserv, companies you'd be familiar with. So, so I have a pretty good knowledge of what goes on in the financial services industry, and now at HashiCorp I have been working with a variety of our larger customers, and particularly now with financial banking customers with a specialty in infrastructure products such as Terraform. So today we're going to talk about our HashiCorp Cloud platform, and particularly Terraform Cloud, the commercial offering being Terraform Cloud for Business. And we want to talk about that in perspective to financial services and what is going on in the industry and using these products. I want to give you a good overview of what Terraform Cloud is as well. We are going to go through some slides. The intention is not that this would be a full training on Terraform Cloud, or that you're going to be able to come away from this knowing all the details, but rather I'm going to go through a lot of touching on the topics just so that you have an idea of some of the feature function and what is available, including how Terraform works in general, in case you're not really familiar with it at that level. So bear with that, and then afterwards we will get in and take a look at some Terraform Cloud activity. Okay, here we go. All right, so within the infrastructure product line, we have a few different products. We're going to talk about those as far as the Terraform world, and then also, if we have a little time at the end, we're going to bring up our HCP Packer for image management. This is all part of our COM or cloud operating model, and that's what in this stack are the various products that we offer, and the infrastructure comes off of that purple Terraform slide as a part of this stack. Okay, so let's get into workflows. HashiCorp is all about workflows. It's all about workflows active to move to the cloud, to operate in the cloud. And particularly what we're going to talk about today is how you manage infrastructure in the cloud through these workflows. Okay, infrastructure as code. This is where everyone needs to be, at least in my professional opinion. And the whole idea is that now, with everything being virtualized, everything being dynamic, you need to control everything as code. And you're going to see this more and more, where, you know, not only cloud infrastructure, but all kinds of parts of the things that you will manage in a DevOps, DevSecOps world is going to be as code. And this is the, is the future, and we're a big part of that with Terraform. Just an example of our HashiCorp configuration language and what that looks like. And really what you're doing is defining the state that you desire, and then the Terraform core is going to take that and make that happen, taking advantage of the products that we're going to talk about, such as Terraform Cloud. There's a lot of benefits to this, but it's really, if you look at it in using the same practices that we have developed in the software world, as far as how we manage code, how we do collaboration, how we move code through the system, up the environments, and manage versions of code and those kind of things. It's all been able to be adopted into this world, since it is all still running as code. So let's get into the products that are involved in this, in the journey. So the core Terraform core, as we refer to it, or sometimes it's called the CLI or the OSS or open source version, that is the engine. That is the main part of how the code that has been developed is interpreted and acted upon and turns into infrastructure and other configuration of other parts of the infrastructure. This is our model that we have had since the beginning of having an open source, that the product that is still supported and available. A lot of people start in this world. Even in the other platforms we're going to talk about, you can still use the CLI. You can still make command line interfaces a part of your interfaces as you move forward. The Terraform Cloud is the offering where it is a managed service in the cloud, and you don't have to worry about the operational aspects so much, and yet have the advantage of what has been our Terraform Enterprise version, which is the hosted part of that. And you need to be in an air-gapped environment, and that's totally closed down. That's the alternative, but it's not the necessity, as we're going to talk about, especially in the financial service industry. So if you look at it this way, in another view from the open source or free offering, which is, like I said, still the core, as you move up through these features, Terraform Cloud has a free tier that you can get into today. Just go to cloud.terraform. I'll bring that up. cloud.hashicorp.com, and you can sign up and be able to go in and start to take advantage of that and start playing with things that we are talking about. But moving from that, as you get into the commercial paid feature, the feature function increases, and it is a full enterprise level service application, and it continues to take advantage of the Terraform core and philosophies. The Terraform Cloud and Enterprise get even further into that. But for the enterprise, you have the operations aspect. As I said, is that you are actually hosting that yourself, either in an on-prem environment or in your cloud environment. Just to mention that the feature parity between Terraform Enterprise and Cloud is very direct. There's really only differences where they need to be because of differences in the mechanisms that they are deployed, and a few areas like that. And the releases come through where new feature function is released generally to Terraform Cloud first, and then moved into the Terraform Enterprise versions. All right, so now let's take a little shift to the right and talk about the cloud journey in financial service industry. pulled a nice section out of a McKinsey article that I'm referencing here. And the two big points that I grabbed out of this is, first, the potential in the cloud that is there, but financial institutions are often taking piecemeal migration strategies and missing out on the capturing the full value. Where, our goal is to help change that, and it is happening today. And the other part is that what they're listing as the important actions almost sound like they've written some advertising for HashiCorp and for Terraform products, but it is to use infrastructure as code, automate all the things, as in the DevSecOps mantra, and to implement patterns that can be used to create self-service experience, automate using CI/CD pipelines, other methods that you're used to in other areas, and also to adopt policy as code, as we'll touch on a bit here. But that's part of why these things work for the financial industry, that because you can use it as part of meeting the compliance and security requirements that you have. Generally, for the especially larger institutions moving to the cloud, they have been cautious. They have, things that I've been involved in firsthand. It was, a scary thing to start bringing things out of the data center and into this cloud type, unknown. But it has been increasing rapidly. The cloud providers have gone to great lengths to make sure that they have secure and compliant possibilities for their cloud offerings. And so as this has been tested and passing audits, as we have things like GovCloud type offerings as well, there is plenty of acceptance of now bringing applications to the cloud. There's still data centers involved quite often, but a lot have been consolidated, and the movement, to the cloud and out of data centers has just accelerated. The part of that is the data security was always a big concern. There have been a lot of modifications in the cloud industry to support proper data security. And so financial services have been willing to start bringing their whole applications with data to the cloud. Interestingly enough, there's been some hesitation to use cloud-hosted services, as far as actually letting things happen there, bring things out of my data center, but that also has been changing. And now most financial services organizations have some form of a go-to-cloud plan or policy. What we are seeing is that go-to-cloud plan or policy is accelerating rapidly. Some organizations are going all in. Some are making movement to become cloud first, cloud only, and it is just going to continue to accelerate in that way. And so this acceptance and the proof of the ability to do this have been opening the doors to this. Organizations have become much more open to the cloud-hosted services. We are seeing people coming to Terraform Cloud, to our other HashiCorp cloud offerings, and it is in understanding that you need to be dynamic, you need to be agile, and be able to accelerate the ability to roll out your products in order to stay competitive and stay up to date in technologies. Some of them have been putting the toe in the water, but others have been moving in much broader rollout modes to fully coming into cloud hosted services. Part of what we're seeing in working with a lot of these organizations is the relationships with vendors are very important. They're still looking for the stability, the support, the relationships that you need to have be confident in the products that you're using. And that a lot of times that leads to using multi products from the same vendor. And this is part of where HashiCorp has the COM model that we've talked about. And many organizations, especially in financial, are moving to using multiples of those products. And as we have been continuing to bring those out to the HashiCorp Cloud platform, they are also using them as managed services. One thing I want to point out is that the companies that are successful with this are specifically creating cloud centers of excellence or cloud platform teams that are central to manage what has to take place to be in the cloud, and then not actually do all the work, but to enable teams to be able to come in and self-service and take advantage of the cloud offerings, but yet in a very structured, organized, and secure way that's necessary in secure environments. And they're also moving away from the concept that data centers have to be a big part of the central source of that. Early on, a lot of things had to go back to the data center for identity and such things, but now it's even being acceptable to bring a lot of that to the cloud, which simplifies the operations. What we are hearing them saying is that they have decided that Terraform Cloud for Business and these other HCP products are acceptable, and that's because we are meeting necessary compliance standards. We have validation and documentation to present for that. We have the necessary safeguards like proper encryption and transit key rotation, all those things that you would need to do if you were running this yourself. It is easing the operational burden such that you don't have to run these things. And that's also very, very popular. People do not want to have to spend all their time on the operational aspects. They want to use the services. And so it is making it possible to move forward with new feature function rapidly. And it introduces a even more improved economy of scale of being in the cloud. So part of that concept is that in reality, a hosted service should be more reliable and secure than even something you're doing in-house, even though you're doing it good and you're good at you have the expertise. It's not always, and an organization like ours has to meet these requirements because of the varied customer base, and to make it feasible for you to be able to consider it. Just the other points here is that you can focus on using the service, putting the energies into how to use the services and not into the operational. And if you look at it, the risk that you'd be concerned with, especially from a Terraform side, would be that if the service is hacked and state file information was exposed, it would show infrastructure information. It's very difficult to do that. Everything is encrypted. We have the compensating controls, and we're continuing to add more feature function in the security and compliance realms to ensure that. One thing I wanted to point out is you look at the industry and you look at especially what's happening in the smaller organizations, but especially the startup and service providers, they're getting away with using the cloud from the beginning. They're cloud first. They haven't started in data centers. They are meeting the compliance and security audit requirements. They are doing the things that you need to do, and yet they have been doing it from the beginning in the cloud. They're using products such as ours to do that. The CTO that I reported to at the online banking bill payment company has been involved in a few startup offerings for payment services that have been totally cloud-based. And so I'm familiar with these through association, and these are growing up and becoming part of the big organizations as well, as you can see in that banner. And so this, if they are doing this, then they are still meeting the controls and requirements, and that means everyone can do that. Okay, so that was a little break down that path. Now we're going to go back into some more things about Terraform. This is where I am going to move through quickly. I just want to bring out the highlights of Terraform in general and Terraform Cloud. We talked about the core engine. This is the base of everything. This is what interprets the code and turns it into infrastructure. It's just a great concept, in my opinion, because it's whether you're starting out in open source or you're doing large enterprise applications in Terraform Cloud or enterprise, this is the core that's there, and the ecosystem that is behind it supports it all the way through. A base concept of how this works is a resource graph, and basically it looks at your code and figures out what are you trying to do, and then puts everything in order based on dependencies, and is able to then use the providers, which we'll talk a little more about, to go in and build the infrastructure in the proper order. So you have to have a network before you can build a machine, that kind of thing. And it's going to understand that and is going to take care of all that for you. So the provider plugins concept, is common in our products, and it's common in, across the technical industries. This goes, a way I like to look at it is, if you look at languages like Java and many that have come off of the concepts built there, is that the language itself only does the base functionality that's needed to be able to interpret the syntax, to be able to apply it to create structures and variables and looping and things like that. But the plugins is what really does the work. And so the provider, such as say an AWS provider, is what is going to really be interacting with the Amazon cloud services and is going to be building the infrastructure, but all under the control of the Terraform that is asking it to happen. And so this makes it very extensible. And what we are seeing is not only that we are providing a lot of core providers, but the other vendors and the industry in general is realizing that we are a big part of this ecosystem. And if they want to join in, they have to bring out providers that they support, such that we can then use the Terraform products to build out the tools that they're providing as well. So it's just an excellent concept of how this all comes together. Talking more about the community, we have providers in our online registry, our public registry, and there's 2,500 and better. And every day there are new providers coming out. And there's a combination of just community provided and partner provided and HashiCorp provided. And they said this is what is making this product just take off. Talking a little bit more about the community and how that's happening. Okay, and we talked about this, but the real base behind how a provider works is that all of these services, all of these vendor products, these cloud providers have API interfaces, and that's how they interact how other products interact with their services, and a provider simply takes advantage of those APIs as well and makes it so that you can dynamically change Terraform code to change what happens within those environments. Okay, version control systems. This is key because this is all as code, as we talked about, and integration with the various version control systems and tight integration is important, and that's all part of the products, and that's how you create the flows that will be managed and auditable. Modules is a big part of Terraform code, which is the reusability. This is the same thing as functions and other languages, but we have a strong ecosystem to both support modules within the products and then to support modules within the community. So there is a module registry. You can have public registries and private. We'll talk some more about that. And it is the way that you don't have to just keep reinventing everything, and how, especially in a controlled organization, you have the ability to create modules to have others use to ensure that they are building infrastructure according to your requirements. Talked about the public registry. The registry is growing with not only modules, but the addition of other parts of the Terraform ecosystem, such as providers, Sentinel, policies are joining in the registry, and even run tasks, as we'll talk about. As we said, there is a private registry as well, which is local to your world. Even if you're in Terraform Cloud, you have your own private registry, and that's how you can create your own modules, as well as having an ability to bring modules and such from the public registry into your domain. All right, a little talk on state. And if you're familiar with Terraform, you know this is a big deal, but really the other core facet that makes this all work is that Terraform knows the state of what it has provisioned, and it stores that. It's stored in secured encrypted beans. This is a big reason for using the enterprise products over the open source, because in open source you have to manage these state files yourself. There's a lot of room for things being misconfigured, lost, corrupted, and been put into places where they shouldn't be. So this is a big part of where the Terraform Cloud and Enterprise will manage that state for you, and gives you the ability to move around even and see what has happened in other runs where state has been created, that sort of thing. So it's a very big part of that. All right, and then we'll go down a little line on the lifecycle management of how things come together. Right. So Terraform Cloud is built with organizations, and below organizations you have workspaces, and the workspaces are one unit of work of infrastructure provisioning. And so you can compose those in various forms as far as what goes into them. We have some guidelines as to how you should approach that, but it is the way that you also do self-service by handing out the ability for teams to manage their own workspaces and to run their own infrastructure building in those workspaces. This slide talks about that breakdown where you can separate things like the network from the applications. You can have responsibilities. You can separate by the amount of infrastructure resources that are going to be built within a workspace, as well as the kinds that are done often and those that are done less frequently. So you don't need to rebuild the database every week, but you might be rebuilding your application every week. Now, projects is a new offering that has been in the works for a while, and this just fills a gap that the customers have pointed out that they've asked for, a way to organize workspaces to still be in the same organization, but to have controls and grouping at a project level. Project can mean whatever it needs to for you. It could be a team, it could be an application, could be the development environment of an application, but you can use that to your advantage. And we're very excited about how this is going to work going into the future. So part of what we've been talking here in the workflow is that you have a consistent workflow, and this is what's important, especially in financial services, especially in very controlled organizations. You want to give people the ability to self-serve and manage things, but you also want to be consistent and know that you're not giving them too much rope that they can hurt themselves. So this is part of what we recommend, and we'll even talk more as we get into the cloud about ways that you can control this even further. So the big basis in Terraform is the fact that there's plan and apply steps, and this happens whether you're running on command line or through the Terraform Cloud. And the big takeaway from this is just that it is always going to tell you what's going to happen, and you have the ability to decide whether that should happen and go forward. And so you're not deploying infrastructure and then looking at it to see how it went. You are seeing what it will look like and making decisions based on that. And so it's a, you know, a big part of how this works that makes it successful. And then when you are ready, you do the apply, and that is what is actually going to go build the infrastructure. All right, another fairly recent offering is run tasks. And what this does is it adds breakpoints into that flow of the infrastructure building such that you can stop and do other, introduce other controls, other processes, and not just go through the plan apply. We have had this concept forever by adding in our cost estimation, our compliance checking, compliance policy as code, and now can offer into even more external services and to have breaks even in more places in this flow. Part of what this does is it gives you an ability to have a pipeline and not even necessarily bring it out to having a separate pipeline code, you know, which is always an option, but it gives you the ability within just running like from Terraform Cloud through normal VCS connected Git flows, and yet still accomplish the pieces you need around that. So this is also a very powerful offering that has improved the product. Another part of this has been out for a while, but this is part of how Terraform Cloud can be your one-stop location for your infrastructure provisioning without having to go into each cloud and have different capabilities. The cloud agents can be deployed wherever you are building infrastructure and can be managed through the core Terraform Cloud, and yet the actual activity is happening in those hosted agents. And so you're you know, this is a common model in software now, and this will give you the ability to provision local, you know, say to your GCP cloud, and not having to be going across clouds, or even as you're going across into data centers and things like that. So this is another aspect, and it just adds to the flexibility, the capacity, those kinds of things. Wanted to point out also about APIs, and we talked about all good modern products of this nature have APIs, and the HashiCorp products are no different. Everything can be done through our APIs. Our products operate through our APIs as being a good practice. And so if you want to bring it into CI/CD pipelines, if you want to control the flow, that kind of thing, if you just want to be able to pull information out of the Terraform Cloud as to what is configured and running, the APIs are available to do that, and still with all of the proper security and controls that you would want to have to make sure that they are used properly and cannot be abused. All right, come down the final path of this with the security and compliance is a big part for the financial services, starting with, as you're going into Terraform Cloud, single sign-on capabilities, interactions with the common authentication mechanisms are there. And so you're not managing a separate set of teams and users. You are bringing in your own existing identities and using them within the Terraform Cloud. And this happens for the UI and across using the APIs and things like that. You have the auditability. This, of course, is always important. So you do have access to the logs. You do can bring these logs where you need to do your audit scanning and alerting, and it's all comes off of the cloud product. There is even a Splunk integration that is pre-packaged and built, and if a lot of you are using Splunk, as is common in the industry, and this is a way that you can bring this information in and have a quick way to implement it and bring it out for auditing and other troubleshooting, etc. All right, and then we talked a little bit about this as far as policy as code. This is a huge thing in industries such as financial. We talked about it a little bit, that you just need to be able to do things to prove that you are ensuring proper use of the infrastructure. The great example I like to say is, can you prove that you're not allowing public facing entities such as AWS S3 buckets, those kind of things. Through policy as code, you can go in and look at what is going to happen, and particularly, again, what is going to happen at the plan stage, so that before you create something that is not compliant or insecure, you have the ability to stop that and not let it happen. And this can be implemented globally as well as locally, down to specifics for applications and workspaces, projects coming up, that kind of thing. Very, very key. Something else that is a big enhancement added recently is for drift detection. A lot of people have tried to do this in some ways with other products, and even against Terraform. We had to wait until we had it done right. And so now you have the ability, if things could possibly change outside of Terraform, your first ideal is, once in Terraform, you're controlling it only by Terraform, and then you don't have drift. But in the event that you have 3 a.m. problems that have to be assessed, you now have the ability for the taking advantage of the state and the code, these things that make Terraform work, and say, does reality still match that? And if not, then you have the ability to decide what to do about that. Was the drift required, and so I want to inherit that, or do I need to return this to its original state? So this is a huge thing to be able to do that, and drift detection is becoming a big part of compliance and audit as well, which you are either seeing or will be seeing. Okay, so this is just a little teaser. This is the image management we talked about, but before we go into that, we're going to break and go off into Terraform Cloud so we can take a look around and see what it is we're talking about, and then we'll come back and just touch on the HCP packer. Okay, going into a Terraform Cloud online UI experience, and I happen to be a part of multiple organizations, and you can see that I have my own little personal playground, as well as some others that we use for purposes within HashiCorp, and even some for other large financial customers. So we're going to go into this HashiCorp CSA. I've already single signed on to this, and in this case, actually using extended identity protection with Okta and that kind of thing, but we won't go through the sign-in process. Okay, so coming into this organization, it shows me all of the workspaces that are available. This is, kind of the main place where you would come in and look at what is happening for these workspaces and now projects. This will be broken down, and you can see the history of what's happening. Like I said, this is also kind of a playground environment where we do a variety of things, and that's where you get to see a good example of runs that have errored, as well as have runs that have been successful. Now, part of what I'm going to show you here is a set of code and workspaces that we have developed, which demonstrate using Terraform to manage Terraform. And this, as we said, is a big part of what financial service companies want to do in terms of having controlled onboarding practices, having ways that things are done according to security and compliance requirements. And so you don't want to be in that place where you just give people logins to Terraform Cloud and let them do what they want to do. I mean, that's okay for some things, for some low-level experimentation environments and things like that. But in your world, you want to be able to do that. And so this is where, like, as a platform team can come in and manage that part of the aspects and be able to develop that. And a common name for this now is landing zone. That applies, has multiple definitions, like a lot of things that we deal with, but it is the idea that as people come in and need to use Terraform Cloud, you can develop the landing zone to onboard them properly. Okay, so we'll take a look at some other runs here, so I can go and see all the previous runs against this landing zone workspace. And here's one that I did recently, and I can go in and look at this. So there's a code base. We're going to touch on that and things in a minute, but the idea of the runs here is that you can see that this was triggered from GitHub. So this is a VCS backed workspace, as we would call it. It means that I changed code. I added this Vault Elk demo configuration into the code. I did a pull request, got approval, and as that was merged in, it automatically triggered a plan through apply or plan actually, and then kicked it off. So in the way this would work, I want to talk about the fact that our landing zone is managing our GitHub repos as well as our Terraform workspaces. And this is all through the the beauty of providers and the fact that providers are not just for cloud infrastructure, it's to manage your environments. And so we have a TFE provider, which besides the APIs that can do these things within Terraform code, you can manage the Terraform environment. And although it's called TFE, it's for TFC and TFE. And so here, I have asked to create a workspace for this elk demo, and I've given it the parameters. And as I look in here at what is going to be built, all the pluses meaning this is new, these are the things getting added. Now, this code base has a lot of definitions of repos and workspaces, but because this was the only thing changed at this time, it is the only thing that's going to come through and be actually executed for this run. And that's all the way that state and code and reality come together to know that we only have to change what has changed since the last run. The other pieces of this are then the GitHub repository, which actually was built for this and using standards and controls to be able to do that in a way that it is going to meet our needs, and even to the point of pulling in templates and things like that to say that when you create a repo, it has to have these particular factions and README files, but as well as disclaimers, licenses, things like that. So the plan was run through. It said that everything was good to go. And then in this case, we have these set where they need to be manually approved. And so before the apply could be done, we had to go in and say, yes, I accept the plan. And then I will go in and apply, and it shows the results, automatically comes up with the outputs that came from that run where I can see that. And you can see here even that in the outputs, it's showing all the outputs of this workspace, even though we've only changed a part of that. In the resources that were applied, it is then going to give me brief information on what has happened. The plan shows the detailed information, and now I know that this has gone through successfully. So this is the power of this, as far as this is Terraform at its best, at its core. But within the UI, there have been major improvements to the feature function and display. And so the ability to see this level of detail in this type of a structured format is just awesome. And this, you can go in and use this as a regular part of the processing that you're doing, or just as a follow-up to see what has happened, or to examine things as you as the platform team may be helping customers that are running things, that sort of thing. But it's just incredible what's going on with that. And this state is what is happening here. And we can see the state file from this, and you can look at the state, the differences in state. You can even see in the new state that was created for this apply, what new information was added to the state from that. Now, you wouldn't normally need to go review state. You don't have to become an expert in state, but this is it's just the demonstrating how powerful that is. And when you do want to go in and see it, you have it available right here. You can download it and manipulate it. This is all under security permission, RBAC controls. Not just anybody could do this, but for the people that might need to, it is there and available. Few other things about this workspace. We're still looking at the workspace, but this is where you can manage variables. We have things like here, we are putting sensitive variables to contain tokens for GitHub, for Terraform Cloud, those kinds of things. This is not the only way to do this. It is the form that has been used quite a bit up until now, but we are continuing to enhance the ability for dynamic credentials, for workload identity, that where even pieces like this don't necessarily need to be associated at the workspace level like this, but can be brought in dynamically. It runs. Couple more things is just getting then into the health space. So for this workspace, there is some drift set up so that you can see this. The drift detection is running, and there's some variation that GitHub changes that have happened. And so it is showing us here where, just ID type information has altered, and we would make changes. We would make decisions about that drift, whether we want to accept them or overwrite them, those kind of things like we talked about before. We also have continuous validation. This has been in a beta mode, but it is continuing to improve, but it is just the ability to actually check other aspects about the workspace, even to the point of like, are there credentials involved that, tokens or certificates that are not going to be valid the next time I run this, those kind of things. And this is just all part of this workflow that we are enhancing. And finally, there's some settings for the workspace where you can go in and set some of those things like the health check and that information. So that was kind of the walkthrough of what a workspace and how that works, how the runs work. You have the ability to kick off runs from within the UI, and especially if you're not using VCS backed. There's other facilities where you can go in here and see in the overview the resources that were created, metrics about what has been happening, how long this plan took, the drift, all that. Very valuable. And I said the UI is very nicely formatted to get you to where you need to see. Because I am a organization administrator, I also have access to more things, and just various levels of permissions that you can grant people. But just a quick walkthrough of here, like the registry. This is the module registry and provider registries. This would be my private registry for this organization. And you can see things like the CSA Common Landing Zone module, which is a part of that. And it is the, a collection of modules that are then available to anyone that is using my organization to be able to pull these in and use them. We're seeing, financial organizations that do a lot with common modules, and especially use them in order to make sure that the code people are running to build things is approved and meeting the standards of the company and the extension of the compliance and audit requirements of that. Very powerful. And then you can also manage providers within the registry, as well as there's other means for that. Going into some reporting of what is going on in your environment, and then settings for the environment, which are pretty extensive. And this is how you would set things up. This is where you would go apply policy sets to the organization for policy as code, where you could integrate run tasks. Just an example where I said about other vendors that are providing us run tasks that integrate into their products. Something like Sneak is actually a code scanning tool that works for Terraform and other languages, and you can add a run task that will run a scan before your code is applied, so that if there are any vulnerabilities that can be identified, you can be brought into the Sneak product UI and deal with the things that it has reported on. And so this is very powerful, as I said. HCP Packer, as we've talked a little bit about, is also brought into the mix as a run task, right? And then just the other configuration and things that you can do through here with setting up your version control integration, your SSO, tokens, agents, all these things that we've been talking about. And that's, part of how you can do it here. All of these things can also be managed through APIs and through the Terraform provider. And so it's very flexible. You don't have to come in and point and click to do things. It can all be automated in a way that happens automatically. Right. Okay, so that's the walkthrough of Terraform Cloud and how it works. I'm sure there's other questions you would have from that, but you can certainly reach out to us, and we can answer those through the forum of the meetup or by contacting your representatives at HashiCorp. All right, so we'll kind of bring this down through the end to just touch about HCP Packer. Okay, so this is about images, about compute images, and this is a powerful part of cloud provisioning. The fact that you can pre-build images, you can reuse images to build machines, things like that. People use them in a variety of means and try to manage them in a way that can ensure that you're using secure and good images. In realms in financial services, this is also critical because you need to be using hardened images. You have to be able to pass audits. You have to prove that you are taking the proper controls in say a Linux machine that you are using for your key financial service products. And so it's something that has to be addressed. Back up a second, say Packer is a open source product that has been available from HashiCorp from early days and has been used across the industry, in cloud provisioning. It's very popular even in that form. It does a wonderful job of being able to use code to define images and build those images and be able to then make them available for like Terraform to pick up and run. Part of what was missing in that, and part of what even the cloud providers have not addressed in a ideal way, is how to manage those images. And if you want to use a lot of images, and if you want to say build images to the point, as we say, they're pre-baked, if you want to say, I'm going to go pick up a hardened Jenkins image to build a Jenkins machine, then it's difficult to know what is the latest image, what is the prop image, has it been brought through the controls and things like that. How do I make sure that people are using the proper images, all those things. And so image management was the final piece that needed to be addressed, and that is what HCP Packer has done, and has done very well. Right. And we talked here about, you have to define golden images, as you'll hear the term quite a bit, the workflow, and can it be integrated into the provisioning, right? So Packer does that. You can build multiple images to multiple clouds even, and including the VMware images using standard formats for that. You can have images separated out by applications and all, like I was mentioning, by tools, by projects, and still working off of base images that are the golden hardened images. And you can track that path such that if a golden image changes, it can force the downstream update of the other images. And so now that billing project gets a new image built for its applications, starting with the rebuilt golden image. And the next time that you provision from Terraform, then it is going to use the latest image. This kind of stuff is just critical for where we are going in this industry, and it's a big part of it. So we won't go a lot more into how Packer works, but just know that HCP Packer in particular, but it is integrated into the Terraform to the point of code level, so that when you are saying, please go build me this machine, you can make sure you can use the Packer library to know that I'm getting the image that I'm supposed to for this environment, for this application, at this hardening level, all those kind of things. So there's no guesswork. You don't have to even do a lot to go back and audit. Is it, did I grab the right image? Because you can prove through this that you are properly applying the right images, and that you have a system that is constantly updating images and keeping them in line. So this is a huge deal with that as well. So keep that in mind. You can definitely check more into this. You can get in and go in and try this out on your own as well. Okay, so we have made it through. It took just as long as I thought it might, but I hope that was helpful. You certainly can contact us. We appreciate your involvement in the meetup user group, and we are going to actively be putting more meetups together, and keep an eye out for that. Tell your friends and colleagues, and continue to come back. And we look forward to meeting with you again.